So for everybody at home, welcome to the Kyle Experience. What I do on this channel is I try to take seemingly complex ideas and break them into bite-sized, digestible pieces that anyone can understand. Today, we'll be talking about the cosmological argument. And with that, I'll just go ahead and jump right in. So a cosmological argument is an argument which claims that the existence of God can be inferred from facts concerning causation and explanation with respect to the universe. I got some notes for this. This argument is also referred to as an argument from universal causation, a prime mover argument, or an argument from first cause. It is also closely related to the principle of sufficient reason as addressed by Gottfried Leibniz, and that goes pretty much for every entity X, if X exists, then there is a sufficient explanation for why X exists. And a quote I liked from Leibniz was, "There can be found no fact that is true or existent without there being a sufficient reason for its being so and not otherwise, although we cannot know these reasons in most cases. Why is there something rather than nothing? The sufficient reason is found in a substance which is a necessary being bearing the reason for its existence within itself." And that's kind of exemplified by this picture here, where, let's say right here, this first little domino is the Big Bang. Somebody had to spark the Big Bang, or else why did it happen? Like, why did it happen now instead of any other time? There's something had to have done that.
Right. And if you think about it, dude, like with all space and everything, like something had to happen. 2 specks of dust had to be placed in the right spot at the right time. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Otherwise nothing actually would have even existed, because what was this place,
Yeah. And when I think about this, I think, like, what would it be if nothing existed?
Exactly.
Like, if there's a void, there can be nothing in it. Like, there's nothing to spark, there's nothing to do anything, because there's nothing. So, like, nothing causes nothing every day of the week.
Yes.
So something had to have done something, and that thing had to have been outside of our outside of the Big Bang, or else how can we explain anything?
Exactly.
But with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the cosmological argument and infinite regress. So this slide kind of explains what infinite regress is and why it's a bad thing, and why you do not want to have an argument that contains an infinite regress. An infinite regress argument is an argument against a theory based on the fact that this theory leads to an infinite regress. For an infinite regress argument to be successful, it must demonstrate not just that the theory in question entails an infinite regress, but also that this regress is vicious. A regress can be vicious due to metaphysical impossibility, implausibility, or explanatory failure. The cosmological argument can sometimes be seen as a positive infinite regress argument, and I'm going to explain what those are here in a second. So a positive infinite regress argument employs the regress in question to argue in support of a theory. Thanks, Zoom. Thank you so much. I love it, Zoom. Sorry, I'll just go ahead and restart that last one. So a positive infinite regress argument employs the regress in question to argue in support of a theory by showing that its alternative involves a vicious regress. The regress relevant to the cosmological argument is the regress of causes, which is an event occurred because it was caused by another event that occurred before it, which itself was caused by a previous event, and so on. Do you have any questions about infinite regress, or does that all make sense to you? Like, basically an infinite regress would be if, like, why am I here? Because of my mom. Well, why is my mom here? Because of her mom. Well, why is she here? Because of her mom. If the system never, like, ends, then it's infinite, and we can't really explain it doesn't explain anything, which would be an explanatory failure.
I think a good infinite regress thing is like the argument of, like, which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Because you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, all right, that chicken came from the egg, which came from the chicken, which came from the egg. You know what I'm saying? That cycle can be repeated for a really long time, but at some point, it wasn't a chicken.
Yeah, that something had to have happened. Like, it can't just, what did it do, just spontaneously appear?
Exactly.
That it caused that too. So, like, You can't really get away from it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, but this kind of goes, this here is my graph to explain ways that infinite regresses can be vicious. So there's metaphysical impossibility, and this involves an outright contradiction, and it requires belief that infinity is impossible. There's implausibility. This argument can be based on personal observation. For example, to the best of our knowledge, our universe had a beginning in the form of the Big Bang. So if that's the case, then something had to have started the Big Bang. That's why it cannot be regressed, because how would you say the Big Bang was started? Oh, something started it. Well, what started that? Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't keep going back and back, because it's implausible. It doesn't answer any questions, and it's impossible. Like,
At some point, nothing existed in this world.
yeah, at least that's how, to the best of our knowledge, that's what we know.
Yeah.
This argument can also be based on more abstract principles like Occam's razor, which posits that we should avoid multiplying entities without necessity. So basically what they're saying here is, what caused me? My mom. What caused my mom? My grandma. We could skip my mom. We could skip my grandma if we're going to talk about her mom, Like, it's easier to just talk about the thing at the top of the pyramid than to talk about all the things in between, because if it's an infinite regress, there's an infinite amount of things in between.
Right. No, that makes sense.
And then
so like because of the Big Bang, I exist, is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
because you could say, oh, because of the Big Bang, there's particles in water on Earth millions of years ago that turned into fish, that turned into amphibians, that turned into birds or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's easier to just talk about the thing at the top, because without it, we'll be talking forever. And then the next one is explanatory failure. It does not solve the problem it was formulated to solve, or it already assumes what it attempts to explain. I have some notes for this one. According to this position, we seek to explain one event in the present by citing an earlier event that caused it. But this explanation is incomplete unless we come to an understanding of why this earlier event occurred. And at each step, pretty much, the occurrence of an event before it has to be assumed. So it fails to explain why anything at all happens. And that's why it fails as an argument, because it doesn't actually explain anything. But there's a couple versions of the cosmological argument. The first one is by St. Aquinas. I believe it's St. Thomas Aquinas. And his argument kind of goes like this. I kind of butchered it down a little bit because it was extremely long and lengthy. So if it's not exactly what you read in books, people, please give me a break. So his argument goes, things have contingent existences. Since it is possible for such things not to exist, there must have been some time at which these things did not in fact exist. Thus, there must have been a time when no contingent things existed. And if this were so, there would be nothing to bring anything into existence. Therefore, contingent beings are insufficient to account for the existence of contingent beings. And therefore, there must exist a necessary being whose non-existence is an impossibility, and from which all existence of all contingent things is derived. I have something for this.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I think he has a very good argument, and a lot of people kind of base their argument off this one. It's also one of the first ones that he's also one of the first people who kind of formulated the argument. And my notes go, since the universe is contingent and could, under different circumstances, not exist, its existence must have a cause, not merely another contingent thing, but something that exists by necessity. So in other words, even if the universe has always existed, it still owes its existence to something other than itself, because we can imagine it without existing. And we can understand this thing to be God.
Dude, I just want to pause you real quick, because I keep coming back to this thought of, if this is true, dude, what's the theory that we're in, like a
simulation?
Simulation is what my mind is just stuck on right now. Because like, if something, like, it's like a program, right? Somebody turned on the program to me, it reminds me a lot of like video games, right? You
Yeah.
turn on and you open your world, and like that world kind of feels like what we are, based on this whole snap of the finger. God created the worlds, and now we exist, and now shit's happening. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That feels weird.
Yeah, that's kind of the same realization I had when I was doing the slides for this, because I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like,
Right,
how
dude.
the fuck did I get here? How the fuck did my mom get here? Like, how did any of this happen? Because it couldn't have been because of my grandma, because somebody had to start her.
Yeah. And it's interesting to just look at it like that, you know, like something somewhere was like, boom, turned us on, and now we're existing, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of wild.
There's a thing on Facebook I see a lot where it's like, two people in the 80s had sex and now I'm here and I gotta pay bills or something. But it's like, it's even deeper than that. Like something started the whole earth and now we gotta pay bills. Like that's
Dude, that's like something that, like, when I'm having a shitty mental health day, like I'll just go outside and I'll look up and I'm like, bro, this life don't even matter, dude. It's not even real. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
I know what you mean.
Because what, you know, it's just this just feels like a place that spirits go or something, you know?
Yeah, I do have something I want to say about that, and I don't want to get too deep into it just because for time's sake. So the guy we had our first the poem and quote analysis, Friedrich Nietzsche, he made a distinction between kinds of beliefs. So he thinks there's life negating and life affirming beliefs. He believes that religion is a life negating belief because it negates the life that we're living now in favor of a life after we die. I don't know how relevant this is to the discussion, but when you were saying you just look up and think of like, oh, this life doesn't matter. That's kind of what that brought me to, was just like the difference between life negating and life affirming. Because, you know what I mean? I don't know how relevant that was to the argument at all, but that's just where my mind took me.
That's exactly where mine took me too. You know, it's just, you know, if all this is true, right, and we got something, we're onto something here, right, or this guy is onto something, then this life it's weird. It almost doesn't matter, but it does, you know, at the same time.
Yeah,
it both does and doesn't fluently.
Isn't that the craziest shit ever?
It is. It really is.
Isn't that just something that you think about and you're like, how do I even explain this to somebody else?
Exactly.
I'm trying though.
Yeah. Here we are.
All right. So this is the argument that I've been really waiting to show other people, just because I like this argument, because it shows that even with science, it doesn't negate the fact that there had to be a first mover. So right here, this is Robert Kuhn's. He came up with a new variant of the cosmological argument, and he says that to deny causation is to deny all empirical ideas. For example, if we know our own hand, we know it because of the chain of causes, including light being reflected upon our eyes. So you can't really, well, I'll just read this quote here. If you don't buy into theistic metaphysics, you're undermining empirical science. The two grew up together historically and are culturally and philosophically interdependent. If you say, I just don't buy into this causality principle, that's going to be a big problem for empirical science, especially because we like to think, if I put this chemical into here, then this should happen. That should be the effect. But if there's no causality, if causality is fake, then how can you even say that? And that's, I think that is like, probably, to me personally, that's the biggest argument in favor of God, because without causality, without something causing everything, there's no way anything would exist. There's no effect without a cause.
Right.
But this is a more new version of the cosmological argument. I think Robert Kuntz really has onto something here, because if you think about it, like, real deeply, really the only way I know the only way I can even tell that I have a computer in front of me is by light reflecting off the computer back into my eyes and into my retinas and everything. So like there's causation. We can't deny causation, period.
Yeah, no, I think this is an important quote because, what is the definition of empirical science?
Oh, we can look that up real quick.
Yeah, what would that be? I just want to know.
Now I looked that up earlier today too. Because I was going through this, getting ready to do this. Empirical, I guess I can just go off the definition of empirical evidence. So empirical evidence is information that is acquired by observation or experimentation. So
Okay.
I think this is a good definition because without empirical science, we're just guessing because we haven't experienced it at all.
It's kind of empirical evidence, empirical science. It's kind of like just the scientific method, right? Is that like what it's saying?
Pretty much is that in order to have, and this kind of goes into the philosophy of mind a little bit, but like in order to have like any true knowledge of something, like if I want to say I know Abe Lincoln, I have to actually like physically experience Abe Lincoln for myself. I can't say as someone in 2022, hey, I know Abe Lincoln, because that's impossible. But like if I was there, I don't know what year he died, or I don't know, but if I was there when he was alive, I would have that option. But like I can't have that. I can't say I know him if I've never met him, if I've never experienced him in my life.
Right.
And there's a field of philosophy of mind that says there's no way we know anything. We don't know anything because we don't actually physically experience it. We just see it through our eyes.
And that's interesting. And that's got a lot of valid points. This, the world could look a lot different to other things, other people, other beings,
Yeah.
Even this world.
I think about that a lot because it's like, even as something as simple as glasses, how big of a difference that makes to people,
Bro, think about this though, right? My version of green is not your version of green.
Yeah, that's kind of the argument that I can't remember the guy.
Like, what if I saw green, but your green was actually red to me? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you've always seen it like that, so therefore that is green to you.
That's
it's just
man, I have so many. That's why I love doing these videos, because everything always comes back to like everything kind of what's the word?
It all complements and it promotes even more inquiry about different things. I feel like more interest and brings up other topics that you can dive into as well.
Philosophy's fucking dope.
Yeah.
But to kind of keep it moving, we'll move on to the Kalam cosmological argument. This is one I studied a lot in classes back when I was in school, just because it's the simplest version of the cosmological argument. It was made popular by William Lane Craig, and what he did basically was he kind of brought it over to Western countries and made it popular for us, because obviously people in Eastern countries talk about this a little more than we do because we're more focused on other things. But the Kalam argument goes, whatever began to exist has a cause of its existence. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause of its existence. Craig explains, by nature of the universe coming into existence, attributes unique to the concept of God must also be attributed to the cause of this event, including, but not limited to, enormous power, if not omnipotence, being the creator of the heavens and earth as God is according to the Christian understanding of God, and being eternal and absolutely self-sufficient. He says, since these attributes are unique to God, anything with these attributes must be God. The cause has these attributes, hence God exists. The cause has these attributes, the cause exists, hence God exists.
And I like that he said enormous power, if not omnipotence. And the reason I like that is because if God exists, then something created God.
Well, that's the whole argument, is that, if something created God, then we need to use Occam's razor and stop talking about what we consider God and talk about that thing. You know what I'm
Interesting.
saying?
Yeah. And the reason I say that is because I'm going back to the simulation theory where we're like, put us inside of a fucking orb where somebody just started it, put two, you know what I'm saying? Like we can't
Yeah.
see the outside of it, whatever. But either way, or like the Horton Hears a Who where you're a speck of dust. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And there's
Yeah,
a
or
whole
speck of dust.
exactly. And like it's just interesting to think about, you know what I'm saying? Because if God exists, then there's something above God.
If God exists, at least for our purposes for this argument, there can be nothing above him. So if there's something above God, then that's God.
And that's interesting. That's interesting.
So
All right,
basically,
go ahead.
yeah, that's what Occam's razor is trying to get at. Is if let's say God has a dad, then we need to talk about his dad. And if he has a dad, we need to talk about his dad. Whatever's at the top of the pyramid, that's what we need to focus on, because that thing is a thing that is absolutely self-sufficient. It can't come from anything else.
Right. But those things might be beyond our sight. You know what I'm saying?
If it did come from something else, then we need to talk about the thing that it came from. That's why Occam's razor is so important here. Because even if, you know what I mean? Like, even if we want to talk about God's dad or God's grandpa, then we should just talk about them instead of God.
Right. I hear you. It's complicated though. It's hard to like not want to make that argument.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why we don't want infinite regress, because we could talk about God's dad or God's grandpa or God's grandpa's grandpa, like
it'd just be a forever cycle. Well, you'd be talking about if God was a big old giant person, right? And we're a speck of dust that this thing that God created, then we could go back to they're on a speck of dust that their God created.
Yeah, and that's why Occam's razor is so important.
Yeah, it's tough.
Occam's razor, when I first heard about it, it really didn't really seem like that big of a deal. But then once you start getting into like infinite regresses, it's absolutely important, because without it, like you were saying, we could talk about we're on a speck of dust. That's on a speck of dust. That's on a speck of dust. That's on a speck of dust. We would never get anything accomplished, you know?
No, there would never be anything going on, for sure.
All right. Yep. And then there's one more. This is argument that I thought this is the argument that kind of pieced it all together for me, because just the way it's kind of laid out in steps. This is by Duns Scotus, and my information on this is on my next slide. But the argument goes, something can be produced. It is produced by itself, something or another, not by nothing, because nothing causes nothing, not by itself, because an effect never causes itself, therefore by another A. If A is the first thing, then we have reached the conclusion. If A is not first, then we return to number 2. And from numbers 3 and 4, we would produce another, which would be called B. And then the ascending series is infinite or finite. An infinite series is impossible. Therefore, God exists. Any questions there?
Nope. I'm following.
Okay. Let me see if I have any notes for this one, because I know this was one I really thought was important.
I think it's just like it's kind of just like a different, I mean, it is just a different way to prove using logic that God exists, you know?
Yeah. And I like how, at least with this one, like, if A is not the right answer, then you have to continue with the series. Like, this is
exactly.
So like you gotta go to number 2 then.
And like, it's like if God was part of another system, then that's not God. The system is bigger. Like if we're on that speck of dust, because I keep going to that speck of dust in my head. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, I'm sorry I did this to you.
I know. I'm telling you. You're like, wow.
I'm sorry I did this to you, but I got to do it to somebody. It has to be said.
Here we are.
All right. So his kind of explanation for that whole system is entities which are considered contingent with respect to their factual existence are necessary with respect to their possible existence. For example, there exists a man is contingent. Nevertheless, it is possible that he exists is necessary because his existence does not include any contradiction. So that's like saying, if Abe Lincoln exists, that's contingent. Abe Lincoln could not exist or exist, but it's possible that he existed has to be necessary because there's no contradiction with the fact that he existed. Nobody can say he didn't exist. And this is kind of, this example is used for the rest of the slide to kind of exemplify why it's necessary that God has to exist. So something different from God is possible, is necessary, because being is divided into the contingent and the necessary. Just as necessity belongs to a necessary being in virtue of its condition, so possibility belongs to a possible being in virtue of its condition. And that's what they're saying with this example up here. It's possible that he exists is necessary because it's possible that he exists. Like there's no way you could say it's not possible he exists.
Right.
Let me go ahead and move this up. It is possible that there is something different from God. It is not of itself because then it would not be the case that it were possible. And it is not from nothing because same argument. Nothing causes nothing. Therefore, it is possible that it is from something else. And let's say it is from something else. Either it's possible that the other agent acts by virtue of itself and not by virtue of something else, not being from something else, or it's impossible. Because if God is the first thing that ever happened, like let's say God's necessary. So like no matter what happens, God exists. There can't be something outside of God. Because what else is there? Like if you're in a void and God only exists, there can't be anything outside that's influencing God because nothing else exists.
Because if there is, then that's not God.
Exactly.
Right.
And then we need to talk about the thing that's influencing him.
Yep.
If so, then it's possible that there is a first agent. So it's possible it exists. And if it is possible that it exists, then it exists, as we have proved before, because just as it's possible that it's necessary, I mean, just as it's necessary that it's possible, if he is a necessary being, he has to be, it's necessary that he exists just by virtue of him being a necessary being.
Right. So basically, it's necessary that God existed, that God exists, because we wouldn't have came from anything if he didn't.
Yeah, because if he didn't exist, then nothing would exist.
You're right. So therefore, there has to be a God.
And it might not be, the thing I like to add here that I feel is super important for people to understand is that it might not be the version of God that we've been told. Like the version of God in the Bible might not be the right version.
Right.
The version of God from the Hindu tradition might not be the right version, but something is out there.
It's gotta be, dude.
Or else without that, you can't explain shit. You literally can't explain a damn thing.
But here's the thing, dude. I just feel like, hold on one sec. Decline. Back to the video. All right. I feel like what is God then? You know? And I know that's a tough fucker. That's a tough question.
I can guess.
This is just where my mind's going, because like I kind of right now I don't see God as like a person or like a human. Right now in my life, I see God as like flow of energy, flow of positive and negative energy. That's like a collective unit. And we are that as a whole, as a planet and everything. You know what I'm saying? So if you put good vibes out, you're going to get good vibes back. If you move the right way, you're going to get those same things back. And like, okay, so say we didn't exist and just God existed at that time. What the hell does that look like? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the way I see it is just a black void. Like it can't be, because there wouldn't be any color. There's nothing to produce light.
There's nothing. You see what I'm saying? That's why understanding God is so difficult. But I don't question that it's there, that God is there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I could try to sit here and explain my conception to you, but I don't have a good conception myself, you know?
Exactly. And it's just tough because, like I said, I see it as this net flow of like energy and like aura and just vibrations and shit. And it's like, okay, but take all this away what was that first like then, you know?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I think about this ever since I started doing the shit for this video, man. I've been thinking about like, well, what was it like before anything happened?
And that's why I love this video, dude. Like these videos, because they make me fucking think so hard about things that I don't like every day necessarily think about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was watching. Well, obviously, I like to look into like esoteric stuff. I was watching this video, and one of the things I really took from it that I thought was important, that I don't know if everyone thinks about it like this, but like this guy says, what makes you think that anything you say is different from anyone else? I had different teachers. Like, because like you're saying, you went to school and you went and I don't even remember what your degree was in right now, but like whatever you had, I didn't get the same schooling that you got. Like, I do not know what you know.
Right.
Like, there's no way I could, because I didn't have the same teachers. And that's why I like sharing these videos, because like my knowledge, I feel, is something that everybody should know. Like, at least
Right.
have an idea about, like, you know what I mean? Like, at least have some type of idea about like what's going on, instead of, because when I first went to class, I had no idea about any of the stuff I've showed in any of these videos. I had no idea. And that's not, it's not like Dixon's to blame, or that like Illinois is to blame or anything like that. But like,
It was just different.
yeah, they didn't, and, like, it's just the knowledge that I have acquired from going to classes and being around, because I could have went to psychology class, I could have went to calculus, I could have went to any class, but I went to philosophy, and that's where most of this stuff comes from. And
Right.
philosophy classes are disappearing across the nation.
And it's interesting, and it's good that you share this type of things, because like, I make music, right? So it's like, even in that sense, it's my understanding, even throughout the music, is going to be so different than what anybody is actually thinking, because everybody's so unique. But somebody's going to be like, wow, that actually makes sense, And I think that it ultimately, the chase for new perspective is so beautiful. You know what I'm saying? Like, it should be something that everybody does,
Yeah.
because new perspective just expands how you see things, or like ways that you have interpreted things that might not have been as solid before, or you know what I'm saying. It just changes you, but you always change the way you're supposed to change in the long run. I really believe that.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about was, fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say. Something along the lines of, like, once you approach your potential grows.
Yeah,
So like, if you, like, oh, this is what I was gonna say. If a challenge to your perspective is something that you have to fight against, then your perspective isn't as strong as you think it is. Like,
exactly.
you shouldn't have to argue for the truth.
I agree. I think, and it goes into it, the belief in God, belief in anything, dude. It just goes into deeper of like, but if you really believe that, then you don't really need anybody else to warrant to like accept your views, if you really believe it.
That's exactly what I'm trying to get at here, is that, if you really have a strong belief, anyone arguing against it shouldn't shake your belief.
Right. Because the biggest belief I think that anybody should have is that they're fucking clueless. Because if you say that you know what's going on, you're a fucking liar, because nobody really does.
That's what I think it was either Plato, or it was one of the ancient philosophers. My philosophy professor would probably punch me right now. But he was put on trial for corrupting the youth, and all he did was ask questions to people who said they knew what was going on. And
Right.
I think the reason why it was so important, at least in my philosophy of law class, was that it was the first time anyone got executed for something like not committing a crime that was on the books. Like, all he did was make people look stupid by asking them questions they didn't know the answer to, but they claim they did.
That's wild. That is truly wild, dude. Because, and that's a scary time of life too, I'm sure, because it's like, wow, I'm just questioning this shit, and I'm, and everybody's questioning that shit. So like, if you're getting killed for questioning shit, then you just then whoever's in charge is in the wrong and wants you to believe everything that they believe, probably to give them some security in their own belief.
Yeah, and the thing I like the most about that was he was presented a lot of opportunities to walk away from everything. Like there were people who were like, you don't have to die like this. Like you could simply walk to a different place. And he's like, no, this is my home. If they think that I did things wrong, then they can execute me, because at the end of the day, I'd rather die like someone from Rome than someone from Athens. Or I mean, I don't know. I think Athens is in Greece. But
yeah, your professor's punching you in the face for sure.
But yeah, you know what I mean? But like he had so many opportunities to just walk away from the situation, and he chose like, you know what? No, I believe in the system. I believe in the legal system. I believe in everything from Greece, and I'm gonna just let the legal system do its thing. And he ended up dying for it when he didn't have to.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, a little bit of history for everybody. So
that we probably do, but
next we have the criticisms or arguments against the cosmological argument. First one is, what caused the first cause? Objection 1. So the cosmological argument leaves open the question of why the first cause is unique and that it does not require any require any causes. Excuse me. Critics often press that arguing for the first cause's exemption raises the question of why the first cause is indeed exempt. But defenders maintain that this question has been answered by the various arguments, emphasizing that none of its major forms rests on the premise that everything has a cause. Over here, I kind of gave a little bit of a definition on the fallacy that people say that proponents of the cosmological argument fall into, which is special pleading. And this is an informal fallacy where one cites something as an exception to a general or universal principle without justifying the special exception. So, for example, I could not tell you why God doesn't have a cause. I couldn't do it. And it's technically special pleading because I'm not explaining anything.
Right.
But William Lane Craig, if you remember him, he is from the Kalam argument. He argues that the infinite is impossible, whichever perspective the viewer takes. And so there must have always been one unmoved thing to begin the universe. He uses Hilbert's paradox of the Grand Hotel and the question, what is infinity minus infinity, to illustrate the idea that the infinite is metaphysically, mathematically, and even conceptually impossible. And I have a video for this. It's only like a minute long, so please bear with me. Can you see the video?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I don't know why that happened.
60-second adventures in thought. Number 4, Hilbert's Infinite Hotel. A grand hotel with an infinite number of rooms and an infinite number of guests in those rooms. That was the idea of German mathematician David Hilbert, friend of Albert Einstein and enemy of chambermaids the world over. To challenge our ideas about infinity, he asked what happens if someone new comes along looking for a place to stay. Hilbert's answer is to make each guest shift along one room. The guest in room 1 moves to room 2 and so on. So the new guest would have a space in room 1. And the guest book would have an infinite number of complaints. But what about when a coach containing an infinite number of new guests pulls up? Surely he can't accommodate all of them. Hilbert frees up an infinite number of rooms by asking the guests to move to the room number which is double their current one, leaving the infinitely many odd numbers free. Easy for the guest in room 1, not so easy for the man in room 8,600,597. Hilbert's paradox has fascinated mathematicians, physicists, and philosophers, even theologians. And they all agree you should get down early for breakfast.
But that he uses that explanation of like, how would you explain infinity, just to kind of say like it's impossible, because how can you have a room a hotel that's full of people to max and still take on an infinite amount of people? It seems impossible, at least improbable.
Right. It's just never ending. It's a fact. It's one of those. It just doesn't end.
Yeah.
It will never end, and that's just again one of those things where we were explaining before that you can't just have a repeating thing.
Yeah. Because if there's an infinite amount of people, like he was saying, the person in room 1,500,666, there's no end. So if they if you double that and double it and double it and double it, there's no number. Like you could take infinity minus 1. What is that answer?
And like in terms of the universe, it's like you can take it as far as you want, but so the universe always has existed, and that doesn't make sense either, because what the hell is always?
Yeah, and that man, I can't wait to show you these other objections, because it gets into time and how time kind of makes this a little bit of a problem. Another kind of criticism, which is actually a continuation of the first criticism, and its objection 2 for it. Critics argue that the premise of causality has been arrived at via inductive reasoning, which is dependent on experience, and that it is unwise to draw conclusions from an inference of causality beyond experience. I agree with this objection just because we're saying everything has a cause. We don't fucking know that. I need to watch my language. But we don't know.
You dropped the first one, I dropped the next 3, so it's okay.
It's like we're saying that everything has a cause, but we don't know that. We're sitting here saying that based on what we know, this is what we know, but like we don't actually know everything, and there's no way we could, because like we're saying, infinity is impossible. So how could you know everything that happened? I have a slide for this one actually, to kind of explain it, but I'll kind of read this stuff real quick. So Hume highlighted this problem with his problem of induction and argued that causal relations were not true independent of experience. So like me thinking that me putting water in my cup will make the cup hold water. If I who knows that'll happen if I don't experience it, you know what I mean? I could happen a million times, but on that 1,000,001 time when it doesn't happen, what's my explanation?
So basically it's saying we have like a limited one, like our lifetime isn't long enough to actually hit that non-cause for one, like where it doesn't happen, you know what I'm saying? Because it's so rare. I don't know. It's like how they talk about the matrix breaking for, people see the matrix breaking all the time, they claim. So I don't know.
I thought this picture kind of I thought this was a decent picture just because it starts at inductive, and we have a bunch of observations which we believe are true, but like we were saying before, how do we know what we actually know is true? So that goes to our perceptions, which are liable to be false, and that creates a deductive hypothesis because we're deducing from the information that we have collected that this is what's going to happen, and if our information is unfalsified, it becomes part of a theory which supports whatever thing we were in favor of, or it is falsified, and then we have to create more observations to decide which is what. But Andrew Locke replies, according to the Kalam argument, only things which began to exist require a cause. On the other hand, something that is without beginning has always existed, and therefore does not require a cause. The Kalam and the Thomistic cosmological arguments posit that there cannot be an actual infinite regress of causes. Therefore, there must be an uncaused first cause that is beginningless and does not require a cause. And I think that's a pretty good argument against this objection, just because if it's always been here, nothing caused it. What could have caused it?
It's interesting that I got there to that always word before it came up in the presentation.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense, it's like it always, either Earth or either the universe always existed, which is not true, or God has always existed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then what does that look like? It's tough. It's hard.
All right, I accidentally went out of the slideshow, but so this is the problem of induction as presented by David Hume. The problem of induction is a philosophical question of what are the justifications, if any, for any growth of knowledge. This highlights the apparent lack of justification, in particular for generalization. For example, the inference that all swans we have seen are white, therefore all swans are white, before the discovery of black swans. So we could sit here and say all things require a cause before we find something that just happens.
Right.
2, assuming that a sequence of events in the future will occur as it always has in the past. For example, the laws of physics will hold as they always have been observed to hold. What are the justifications for that? We don't know. We are just assuming. And that's the whole problem of induction, is that we're making assumptions about the future that we don't really know based off generalizations or assumptions that
we'll never know. We'll never know if that break in the matrix will happen or not. We can't predict that.
Yeah.
You can't predict.
It's so crazy to me because, it seems like there's such like high level thoughts, but like they came from like the 16th century, It's like,
right.
What are these guys really thinking about?
They had no lives. They're sitting there like, man, you know what I'm saying?
Someone like Thomas Aquinas, who was way before anything we have even thought, like he wouldn't even imagine what a car would look like. He would have no idea. He wouldn't even know what car meant.
Right. And this is part of something I've been going through lately with this. Not that technology is bad or anything, but we have so many distractions in front of our face right now in so many different aspects. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like they tell you to meditate every day, they tell you to do this, but like not no one, because people are doing it. Like I try to, but it's just like, if we just sat and thought for a little bit every day, we'd be a lot happier, I think, as a unit of people, instead of constantly running to the distractions and running to the, all that stuff. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I definitely think that distractions are definitely plague. I wish I had like something more to add, but really I just think that, we try so hard to resist distraction. People sell whole classes on it, and it's really just your ability to focus your attention. I actually do groups on this at my job, where it's like, you can meta awareness is like, let's say you're reading a book and you're reading a book and you read like 5 pages and you have no recollection of what you just read. That's a lapse in meta awareness. And basically, you can work that muscle, you know what I mean? Like you can change the way your brain thinks about it. So like you could, as long as you realize that you don't know what's going on, that's meta awareness too. So like the more you practice meta awareness, the more aware you are of things. Like, and they believe, Dr. Richard J. Davidson, I do this talk all the time. He believes that meta awareness is absolutely necessary for change because, for example, you could practice shooting threes a million times, but if you're shooting it like this, like Lonzo was, you're never going to have a good form. And if you keep practicing that, you could be practicing like this for a while, but once you start doing this, you need to know that you're messing up again. So if you don't have that meta awareness, you'll just keep practicing the wrong shit. Exactly.
I think, no, you make a good point. I think another word for it that because you're saying meta.
Yeah.
Meta awareness. I think a lot of people are going to understand it as being present.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Being present in the moment, analyzing what you're doing in the current moment. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Instead of worrying about the future or the past, be present in your actions. Choose wisely is another one. Like, be in that moment to actually think like, hey, should I do this? Not, should I do this? Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Like, actually think about how your soul and your energy feels about that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. To kind of get back to the topic we were on, another argument against the cosmological argument is that it is not evidence for a theistic God. According to this objection, the basic cosmological argument merely establishes that a first cause exists, not that it has the attributes of a theistic God, such as omniscience, omnipotence, and omnibenevolence. This is why the argument is often expanded to show at least some of these attributes are necessarily true. For instance, in the modern Kalam argument given above, I think this is not really that strong of an argument against God, just because like there still is a first cause. Something outside of what our field of existence caused everything. Like they're not saying that's not true. So I think it's kind of a useless argument. I'm not really sure why I put it on the presentation.
Well, there's bad arguments to everything, you know.
Yeah. But
I think they're just trying to come at the fact that it's not all powerful, all knowing, and all good. You know what I'm saying? And that, like, that's kind of already known. I feel like,
yeah, I know.
At least on the last part, because of an argument earlier said that if God created everything, then He created the devil and evil. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So therefore, that's kind of already, duh. Like, what do you mean? We kind of already know that.
Exactly. The problem of evil for me is honestly one of the biggest issues I have with theism, just because if a God is all powerful, so he can do anything he wants at any time, there's no laws that will restrict him at all, because he's all powerful. He's all knowing, so he knows that there's a baby about to get shot by a crackhead right now. And apparently he's perfectly moral. So is it moral to allow the baby to get shot by a crackhead? I don't think so. That's my problem. That's how I see the problem of evil, is that like he's either not all powerful, he's either not all knowing, or he's not all good. But
right,
like he could be 2 or 3.
Put it this way, right? There could be a vision longer than what we see, though.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I mean, there's a problem of animal suffering too, where it's like, what suffering do we get, or what benefit do humans get out of a fawn dying in a forest, like horrifically? Like, you know, the most horrific way they could die, like stuck underneath a tree that's on fire while getting eaten by a lion or something, like, you know, like just the worst thing ever. What benefit do we get from that?
Yeah.
Because like obviously
I could come up with some bullshit, but it's bullshit until it's actually true. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you know,
that deer had a disease that was going to kill all humanity. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, you could think, yeah, exactly. We don't know. And that's the problem of induction right there. We're assuming that there's no benefit for us. I'm assuming that there's no benefit for us from this deer dying in the woods, but who knows how much we actually got saved from it being killed.
Exactly.
So this is the one that I like to talk about because it's interesting, and I got 3 more slides, so we'll make these last couple of slides real interesting. So an argument against the cosmological argument is the existence of causal loops. All right, a causal loop is a paradox arising where traveling backwards in time is deemed a possibility. Backwards time travel would allow for causal loops involving objects or information whose histories form a closed loop and thus seem to come from nowhere. A sufficiently powerful entity in such a world would have the capacity to travel backwards in time to a point before its own existence and to then create itself, thereby initiating everything which follows from it.
But did God create time travel so this could happen on purpose?
That's an argument against the cosmological argument. It's saying that, well, this is saying that like an infinite regress isn't bad because God still created everything, but God created itself.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Okay.
Richard Hanley argues that causal loops are not logically, physically, or epistemically, Jesus, or epistemically impossible. In time systems, the only possible objectionable feature that all causal loops share is that coincidence is required to explain them. I think that is a good argument against causal loops, just because, like, what if God has the power? If, like, you know what I mean? Like, if he already did all this stuff, why would he go back in time to redo it all again? Like, it's just coincidence, and that's not really an explanation. That's an explanatory failure. So even if you were to say, oh, Why are we here? Oh, God created a causal loop. Why? Like that doesn't answer any questions, really. I just
Right. It's interesting.
This is the understand. Do you understand this? Because it's necessary for you to understand this to understand the next arguments.
A causal loop is a paradox arising when traveling backwards in time is deemed a possibility. So like this is saying that time travel is real, right?
They're saying, yeah, if because an all-powerful being could do whatever he wants. Like if he wanted to travel backwards or forward in time, that shouldn't be shit to him.
Okay. And so by saying that, it's basically saying what?
Like if as an argument against the cosmological argument, it's possible. And all you have to do to beat the cosmological argument is show that it's possible that it's wrong. So it's possible that God went back in time and created everything and created himself just because he wanted to.
Interesting. I think that, you know, in order to validate that, it'd have to be not validate, but then God would be able to exist at all times, at all places.
But my problem with that is like, yeah, because you just kind of brought up a good point. But I mean, it's a loop. So God created God for the creation, for the reason of God. And that's the thing. And that's why Richard Hanley's saying like, it's a coincidence, because why would God go back in time to create himself? Like who would have created him first? You know, something like, you know what I mean? At least in time, in relation to time.
Yeah.
Like, something had to have created God. So we shouldn't even be talking about if God went back in time, because like something had to have created him before he had the power to go back in time.
Exactly.
So I think that Richard Hanley has a point that it's not logically possible or physically or epistemically possible, because, well, even if God goes back in time and creates himself, who created him before he had the power to go back in time?
Exactly. That would be God.
And then if that's the case, how did, you know, like if that's the case, then how the fuck, why are we talking about the person who was created? We should be talking about the one who created him.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's actually crazy.
Dude, it's just a big old, for lack of better wording, mind fuck. Like it's hard to even grasp these things sometimes, you know?
Yeah. I really do. There's a lot of stuff from my classes I still don't understand, and I've tried. I really have tried.
It's like in my head, I always try to paint a picture of like what I'm thinking. And like if I think about God without his first creation, say it was the Big Bang, for example, what the hell? Like I keep going back to this. What the hell does that look like?
Yeah, what did the Big Bang look like before it banged?
Right.
Why did it bang?
What the hell is God? That's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like how, yeah, like what did it look like?
Some dude floating in the universe, or is it like, you know, energy? Or you see what I'm saying? But where did the energy come from? That's what I'm fucked up about.
Yeah, that's I wonder if that's on one of these other slides. But there's a thing where there's an argument in here, maybe not. I might have took it out because there's a lot of stuff. But even if there is multiple different, like, let's say energy and sound and matter and time, it doesn't matter. We need to talk about what created all those.
Yeah, but yeah, that's true. But what if energy, see, because you're right. That makes sense too. Now I'm even more mind fucked.
I'm telling you, it's so crazy, especially talking about our creator or our supposed creator, because like there's no, you could sit here and say there's, oh, energy created God, but then what created energy? You know, like there, no matter what, you need to talk at the thing at the top of the pyramid, because like there's no point in talking about anything else. It's so crazy.
No, but like it's always like that. What is, you know, it's just tough. It's tough.
But let's go ahead and move on. There's only 2 more slides left. Another argument against the cosmological argument is the existence of infinite causal chains. Critics David Hume, he was the one for the principle of induction and problem of induction, sorry. And Paul Edwards later have invoked a similar principle in their criticisms of the cosmological argument. William Rowe called this the Hume-Edwards principle. They think that this is a way to allow infinite regress. So if the existence of every member of a set is explained, then the existence of that set is thereby explained. David White argues that an infinite causal regress. David White argues that an infinite causal regress providing an explanation is fallacious. In Hume's dialogues, and this is kind of a, well, I mean, this is a hit against Hume, but saying it's a hit against him is saying that people can't change their minds, which I think is wrong. But in Hume's dialogues concerning natural religion, the character Demia states that even if the succession of causes is infinite, the whole chain still requires a cause. Servan argues that there is an infinite and complex causal structure. A number of other arguments have been offered to demonstrate that an actual infinite regress cannot exist, kind of like the video we just watched. What do you think of this one? I think this one doesn't really, it kind of moves the goalposts for me, just because, like, all right, yeah, I'm explained by my mom's explained by her mom, and let's say it's a loop, like the time loop. What caused the loop?
Right. What do you mean by it moved the goalpost?
It just doesn't really, it's an explanatory failure. They're saying that this, just because I know how I came here and my mom knows how she came here, that doesn't mean that our existence is explained. Because, like, for me at least, I think that having an infinite regress as an explanation for an infinite regress is kind of like what David White's saying, it's fallacious. It's not really, to go back to my my graph, I feel it's an explanatory failure because it doesn't solve any of the problems it was formulated to solve. It assumes what it attempts to explain.
Right. I'm struggling to gather thoughts on this one because I want to know, what does it mean by a set? So like the chain, like that chain.
Yeah, let's say so this. I'm sorry, what are you saying?
Is that the set then? The chain?
That's how I chose to illustrate it.
Yeah.
I thought that, like, like this could be me. This is my mom, this is her mom, this is her mom, infinitely. Because that's what it has to be, is infinite, because there's no, without this is an argument against first mover, so there can't be a first mover here.
If that's the case, then we would be God, all of us.
Pretty much. Or I guess, I don't know. I think that
because we exist, God exists. I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying?
I can't see that, but this is also an argument against the existence of God.
As a higher, yeah. Okay. I'm still listening.
Yeah, so I just have a problem with their conclusion of point A here, with number one. If the existence of every member of a set is explained, then the existence of that set is thereby explained. Because you could have like a set of watches, and I know exactly how they were made, but someone had to put all those watches together.
Right.
Like,
And
things
someone
don't
put
just
that,
start.
and then that person that put those watches together also was created by something else.
Yeah. And then
So it has to be an infinite regression until it's not.
And that's why everyone who is a proponent for the cosmological argument says infinite regresses are useless, because it doesn't explain anything until you get to the first thing, which is an argument for the cosmological argument.
Right. Yeah.
So we can just go ahead and move on from this one because it's so complex that I just wanted to present it to people and let them think about it themselves because I don't have.
That's how I am right now. I'm just sitting here trying to absorb it all and like interpret it in my own way. Because it is a big topic, you know. It is something that like once you start to think about it, it's like we might not know anything at all.
Yep. That's what I was doing. I was sitting in my my little smoke room, and I was sitting there, and I was just thinking, like, you know, everything we know could just be made up. You know, we seem to believe that we came from the Earth, but how do we know that? What caused the Earth? What caused the solar system? What caused all this? Something had to cause it. There's no way it just happened. And if it did, something made it happen.
I agree. It's just, you know, it's hard to even put your finger on what you think about in terms of this sometimes, you know. So that's why when people are so set in stone, it makes me, I don't know, it doesn't offend me or anything, but when you're so set in stone, it's like, are you really?
Yeah, do you really believe that, or are you scared?
Because when you sit down and look at it and you're like, you know, you're sitting there, you're like, if you observe all of the things that you've brought up today with an open mind, your mind is just not there, you know, like you'll accept that you don't know.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to.
There's no way you could. There's no way you could possibly know.
Exactly. And that's where faith comes in, you know.
And that's why I think the best argument against the cosmological argument, to me personally, is the problem of induction, because we seem to believe that, you know, everything we know is true, but do we know for a fact that what we know is true? We don't.
No.
We only can generalize or assume, and that's not good enough for induction. You're like, no. That's not good enough.
No.
And
it just allows so much room for non-explanation.
And that's a problem. That's infinite regress. That makes it a vicious regress because it doesn't explain shit.
Exactly.
I'm glad I explained that early, because this isn't really related to this, but the whole thing about infinite regress and like why it's bad was at like the end of this whole like presentation before. But I felt that it's way easier to explain, like, hey, this is why it's bad, and here's why it's considered bad, and then to just kind of, oh, well, this is what it is, and here's why it's bad. Then here's why it's bad, and here's what it is. I think that's a little bit easier.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So this is my final slide. It's the problem of time, or Big Bang cosmology. The problem of time is a conceptual conflict between how quantum mechanics regards the flow of time as universal and absolute, whereas general relativity regards the flow of time as malleable and relative. The Big Bang theory states that it is the point in which all dimensions came into existence, the start of both space and time. The critics, J. Richard Gott III, James E. Gunn, David N. Schwarm, and Beatrice Tinsley claim the question. They claim that the question, what was there before the universe, makes no sense. The concept of before becomes meaningless when considering a situation without time. It is similar to asking what is north of the North Pole. So,
no, I get it, dude. It's because I was talking about this earlier, man. Like, what is nothing at a certain time? There is no time when nothing exists. And yeah,
it's like time in relation to what? And that's exactly what it is. It's in relation to what? What is it relating to? Nothing, because nothing exists. So which one do you think is more real? The quantum mechanics where it's universal, or relativity where it's relative? Because right now I'm leaning more towards relativity, because without that, it makes sense to say that nothing existed before the Big Bang, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. I have to agree with you on that, because I've been coming up with this in my head the whole time we've been doing this. I've talked about time and I've talked about space, and I talked about what does it look like and what was there before the universe, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
I swear it doesn't, Riley. I swear it doesn't. And that's why I think this is such an important conversation to have. Because
Yeah.
how do you explain it? How do you explain all this? How do you explain anything? How do you explain the words coming out of my mouth?
I can't. You know?
I don't know. This is probably the mad scientist feeling, like what they feel, because I just want to laugh. It just seems so absurd to me.
Yeah.
Like, how do you explain it? You can't. You literally can't. There's nothing I could explain to you to make it make more sense.
And it's like, I took a lesson on like, well, not a lesson, but we went over something in one of my science classes at school. And it was like, basically, the more you know, the less you know. So like the more you understand, the less you understand, because answers just bring more questions. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And the way I see it, and here's how I consider information in my brain. Here's how I think information works in my brain. This is a conclusion right here. And with that conclusion, I can either go this way or this way. And that creates another one of these. And it can go, it's just infinite.
Exactly.
What is it called? There's a specific word for this. And man, I just need to start reading my philosophy notes more. I can't even think of the name. It was the most important version, or the most important way to think about thinking, but it doesn't include humans because we can always make a decision to change our mind.
Right.
But philosopher Edward Fesser argues that most cosmological arguments for the existence of God do not depend on the Big Bang or whether the universe had a beginning. So he pretty much moves the goalpost for these people, saying that, well, your argument doesn't matter to our argument because none of our premises require that there was a Big Bang.
Right. Yeah, that's a very valid point.
Oh yeah. Well, let me go ahead and stop this screen share.
What a time.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so what do you think, Riley? What do you think do you think that there's a first mover, or do you believe that it's infinite regress?
I think, and I could be wrong, but I think, the way I feel about it right now is that I feel like there is a first mover. And I have felt like that for a really long time because there's some things that we just can't explain. And maybe we can someday, but until, that it's like, I don't know, dude. My mind's blown right now. I am in a whirlwind of thoughts, and I'm just trying to digest it all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that's just what this conversation and most of these videos do for me. Is it's like, it just helps me analyze how I think about things, and it gives me a new perspective.
Yeah.
Because up until today, I was dead set that like energy was God, and now I'm like, I don't know, because what created that energy?
Yeah, I know, and I'm glad I could show you Occam's razor, man, because that is the thing that's going to get you through a lot of this. Is that it doesn't make sense to focus on the energy; it makes sense to focus on what made it.
Right.
But I feel like there's a level to that that's not really that's not as deep as what it should be, because yeah, it makes sense to focus on what made it, but the energy is also important too. Like it's
right.
not to take away from energy, you know what I mean? But it's not
right.
It's not the first mover.
Yeah, and it's difficult for me to formulate an image or to even develop a concept in my mind of what it looks like or feels like or seems like, to picture what the first mover is.
Yeah.
As in God, to picture what God would be.
Yeah. I don't know what it would look like either, honestly. I want to say he would look something like us, because That's just what I've been taught. But how do they know that? That's the problem of induction. How do you know that? How do you know that God looks like us? You don't.
We have no clue.
You're just assuming, or you're generalizing.
Wild.
Yeah, that's why, and to me, I think there's a first mover, just because without it, I can't make it through. I can't make it through the day. I need there to be a first mover.
That's a really good point too. You know,
like without it, I'm gonna be sitting here thinking about like, just how else could there be? How else could anything exist without there being something to start everything? Because even if we want to say that science is right and that the Big Bang is real, something had to start that.
nothing would make sense. But there's so much unknown if that's the case. Prior to the Big Bang, there's so much unknown.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that's as far back as we can go, just based on like our limitations.
Right. So, but like based on the definition of the Big Bang, because what was the Big Bang?
I think it was, I don't even know, because there's no real, the Big Bang is just the Big Bang. Like, it's its own definition.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to look into the Big Bang to like really conceptualize what would happen before it, you know?
Because at least from my understanding, there was just like a point in space and then it blew up. That's my understanding.
You know, exactly. It and I think that, you know, that point or whatever, maybe that was God. But think about space, dude. Dude, I'm hurting my own brain.
Yeah, exactly. How the fuck did space get here before the Big Bang?
Where's space coming from, dude?
That's what he was saying. Whoops, I did the wrong thing. If I can pull this back up.
Like space, dude, it's infinite. Is it infinite?
We don't know. We can only assume.
It pisses me off, dude. It's frustrating me right now because like
with the Kalam argument, he had to create the heavens and the earth, because before that, what was there? Nothing. Like, there was nothing there. Like, you can't even say space was there because something had to create that.
And what the hell is space?
Right? And we don't even know what the fuck space is. We don't know shit. We don't know a damn thing about nothing, bro. We don't.
No.
And all we do is make generalizations and assumptions every day.
We are still so primitive. It's not even funny.
Every day, that's all we do.
That's how I feel. We are so primitive.
All right. I don't even know how to end this. I don't even know how to end this, because that was just, it's so like deep, you know, like, and I hope people watch this and I hope they think about things, and I hope they really like think about what I'm like, what's being presented here, because I don't have the answers. I'm not even going to lie to you. I'm only presenting the information because it wasn't presented to me. Like, I had to go out and find it. So yeah. I just want people to, you know, at least have an option of like, hey, if I want to know about it, I can, like, because you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. You got to put it out there for people to see, you know, and like, I encourage people that are watching this, you know, this is probably something we should put at the, you know, beginning of the video, but like, take a second, watch this shit, pause it, think about this shit, try to picture it, try to conceptualize it in your mind, because you're not gonna be able to.
Yeah, and that's something you should think about. Like, why can't I?
Why can't I?
Man, all it can make me do is laugh, because I don't have the answers, and I'm sitting here acting like I do.
It is because, and I think it's like humorous because it makes us feel like, or me personally, it's like, wow, I really have no control over anything.
Yeah, even the things I know are just assumptions.
Exactly. Like tomorrow, it could be like, reverse, we're doing something else. And then gravity is backwards.
Yeah, we don't know. We can't stop it.
Right.
We probably wouldn't even be able to realize the difference.
Exactly. It's crazy. It's wild, because yeah, it's just wild. Title, wild. That's it. Title of this chapter.
All right. Well, if you made it this far, and I hope you did, because this was probably my best video ever, and I probably won't be able to top it because I don't know how you can top that. But if you made it this far, I assume you like this type of content. Please like and subscribe, leave comments, let me know what you think, because I'm really interested in knowing what other people think about this, because it's probably the most important thing we'll ever talk about ever. Like, honestly, I don't know what would be more important than if we had if something made us. And if it didn't make us, how do we explain any of this? I'm gonna leave it at that, because there's nothing else I can say.
Yeah.
There's nothing else I can say. But I'd like to thank Riley for coming on and getting mind fucked with me, because it's not easy to think about. And you know, if it was easy, everyone would do it. That's the
And I think that's why the distractions are in place, buddy. It's easier not to think about this shit.
yeah. Well, thank you, Riley, for coming on the show. You had a lot of great insights, and I'm sure everyone who watches it's going to know that too, because there's no way to avoid it. So thanks for being on the show. I can't even end it because I don't even know what to say anymore. My mind's just gone.